Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into customs and traditions from around the world.
Oh, fascinating topic.
It really is.
Mhm.
I mean, think about it. These everyday practices really give us this amazing glimpse into a culture's soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Like windows into their values and beliefs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll uncover some truly fascinating examples. Like, we'll look at Holi in India.
Oh, yeah, holy.
Not just a festival of vibrant colors, it's
Yeah.
actually a really powerful ritual.
Renewal, right?
Renewal, social harmony.
I love holy. Such a great example.
Then we have the Japanese Hanami.
Oh, beautiful.
Imagine this, a society where everyone takes the time to appreciate those beautiful cherry blossoms.
It's so fleeting, too. Their beauty.
Fleeting beauty, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something we can all learn from, that perspective.
Absolutely. It's like, you said, peeking into the soul of a culture through these customs. It makes you think. Take arranged marriages in India.
Okay, yeah.
Now, that might seem really unfamiliar to a lot of people, but it reflects this really deep-seated belief in family ties
Mm.
and a completely different approach to, like, compatibility, prioritizing shared values over individual romantic passion.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing for us to think about, the different ways societies think about relationships.
That's how they structure those relationships.
Yeah.
And families, yeah.
Yeah, family bonds.
That's such a good point. You know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
Afternoon tea in the UK.
Yes. Classic.
It's not just about the tea and the biscuits, it's a whole ritual.
A pause.
Yes, a ritualized pause in the day,
Yeah.
a time to connect.
Share that experience with others.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because it's such a contrast to that vibrancy of holies, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Two very different but very important customs.
Totally. One emphasizes like personal renewal, and the other highlights that importance of social cohesion.
It's those contrasts, I think, that make exploring customs and traditions so enriching.
Definitely.
They challenge us.
To think differently.
Yeah. To think differently, broaden our understanding of, human behavior. We often think of spirituality as like this deeply personal thing.
Right.
But even there, customs shape the experience.
That's so true. Think about Buddhist practices, for example.
Okay.
Meditation, chanting.
Yeah.
It's all aimed at achieving enlightenment and that inner peace.
Yeah.
But the ways they get there can be so different.
Lots of different interpretations.
Right. Some emphasize mindfulness, detaching from desires, while others focus on cultivating compassion and wisdom.
Right.
And then, if you look at Christianity, holidays like Christmas
Yeah.
and Easter,
Yeah.
centered around key events in the life of Jesus,
Mm.
but celebrated in all these diverse ways.
Reflecting different customs,
Yeah.
influences, yeah.
From midnight mass to those elaborate Easter feasts, it's fascinating. They really demonstrate how faith is lived out.
Through different cultural lenses.
It's incredible. Even within one religion, you see so many variations.
Guys.
And then you have something like the Hajj pilgrimage in Islam.
Yeah.
Such a powerful demonstration of faith and devotion.
Millions of people, all those different backgrounds coming together for this ancient ritual. Amazing.
It's a good reminder of the unifying power of shared beliefs and practices.
Absolutely. It's not just about religion either.
Oh, good point.
Even secular customs.
Yeah.
They can tell us a lot about a society's values.
Yeah.
Like the custom of bowing to elders in Korea.
Right.
It seems like a simple gesture, but it shows such deep reverence for seniority.
The wisdom that comes with age.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful observation. It really makes you think about how different cultures view age and experience.
Don't they? In some cultures, age is revered, like you said. In others, it's all about youth.
Interesting.
It all comes down to what a culture values.
Right. That makes sense.
How those values are transmitted through these everyday practices.
And speaking of transmitting values, how do you think traditions shape how cultures express themselves?
Creatively.
Creatively, yeah. Through art, music, storytelling.
That's a great question.
What do you think?
Well, I think artistic expression really is like a powerful window into a culture's soul, don't you?
Absolutely.
Like take indigenous art in Australia,
Oh, beautiful.
the Aboriginal dot paintings.
Yeah.
Those intricate patterns, the vibrant colors, they're more than just pretty pictures. They're a visual language.
Connecting people to their ancestral land.
They're stories.
Yeah. Their spiritual beliefs.
Exactly. It's like they've woven their entire worldview into those dots and lines.
It's incredible. And it's not just visual art either. Think about flamenco in Spain.
Oh, the passion.
Right. that fiery passion. It's a blend of music and dance and raw emotion. It tells such a powerful story.
Of resilience.
Yes,
Cultural identity.
and the complexities of their history.
It really does embody so much.
And you know what it makes me think of? The power of oral tradition in Native American storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
These stories, passed down through generations, they're more than just entertainment. They're like living history books.
Preserving their cultural knowledge, values, the lessons they've learned.
It's so powerful.
It reminds us that tradition isn't just about doing the same things over and over.
It's not static.
No, it's this dynamic process of transmitting wisdom and meaning across generations.
You know, we've been talking about these grand expressions of culture,
Yeah.
but tradition also lives in the everyday, in those subtle codes of conduct.
Etiquette.
Exactly.
Fascinating how those unspoken rules shape our interactions, you know.
I know. Take the difference between bowing in Japan as a sign of respect and the handshake we see in a lot of Western cultures.
Totally different.
So different. It highlights how differently cultures approach formality and even physical contact,
It's amazing what a simple greeting can tell you.
isn't it? So much about those cultural values.
And then you have that emphasis on hospitality in Saudi Arabia,
Okay.
offering coffee and dates to guests. Deeply ingrained custom there,
Shows their generosity.
creating that welcoming environment.
It's such a beautiful example. Those small gestures can really speak volumes.
They do. It's important to remember these customs, they aren't just random.
Right.
They reflect deeper values and beliefs that really shape the fabric of a society.
And speaking of reflecting values, it's amazing how clothing and adornments can say so much about identity,
Oh, absolutely.
heritage, even social status. Think about the Indian sari, for instance.
Elegant.
So elegant, so graceful. But it's more than just a beautiful garment. The way it's draped, the colors, the fabrics, they all hold meaning.
It's like a story.
It is a story about cultural ideals of femininity, tradition, regional identity.
And for something completely different, let's look at the Scottish kilt.
Okay.
With those tartan patterns that represent different clans.
So distinctive.
Such a strong sense of clan identity, Scottish heritage.
It's amazing how one piece of clothing can hold so much history and pride.
It really is.
And it's not just these, traditional garments either. Even something as simple as the South American poncho.
Oh yeah, the poncho.
Originally designed just for warmth, right?
Yeah. Practical.
But it's evolved into this symbol of Andean culture, with all these different styles and patterns.
Representing different regions and social groups.
It's a great reminder. Clothing isn't just about fashion, it's a way of communicating.
Who we are, where we come from.
And what we value.
Exactly. You know, as we've been talking about all this, I've been struck by how tradition really provides a framework for navigating life.
Yeah, in so many different ways.
From birth to death.
And you're right, we can't shy away from talking about death, even in this conversation about customs. It's a universal experience.
But the way we grieve and commemorate, the meaning we find in death, that's incredibly diverse.
Like compare Mexico's Day of the Dead, that vibrant celebration of life and remembrance, with the Tibetan sky burial.
A spiritual practice rooted in that belief of returning to nature.
Completely different approaches.
They highlight how differently cultures view mortality, the afterlife.
In Mexico, death is embraced as a part of life.
Whereas in Tibet, the focus is on the impermanence of the body, that spiritual connection to nature.
And then you have the tradition of those elaborate coffins in Ghana.
Oh, yes. Shaped like objects important to the person's life.
Reflecting a belief in the continuation of the spirit.
Honoring their passions, achievements, even in death.
It really is fascinating.
Isn't it? It's like every culture has this unique way of understanding these mysteries.
Of life and death.
Finding solace and meaning through their traditions.
It's incredible. It really speaks to the power of customs and traditions, doesn't it? How they shape how we see the world, our place in it.
Absolutely. They offer us this window into the vast tapestry of human experience.
It's amazing. Even with all our differences, we all share this common thread.
Search for meaning.
Connection.
A sense of belonging.
It's fascinating. It's one thing to kind of marvel at these customs from afar, but it's another to actually navigate them in real life.
Oh, for sure.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah.
We're constantly encountering different cultures.
Absolutely. It's one thing to understand the, what of traditions, but the how of actually interacting respectfully. That's the real challenge.
It is. So how do we go from just observing to respectfully participating? What are some things to keep in mind when we encounter those different customs?
Well, I think a lot of our sources emphasize this idea of approaching those cultural differences with, like, a real desire to understand.
Okay, yeah,
It's kind of like, imagine you're entering a new conversation.
right.
You wouldn't just jump in,
You
right?
wouldn't interrupt.
Yeah, you wouldn't interrupt or, like, impose your own opinions right away.
No, definitely not. You'd listen, you'd observe. Try to understand how the conversation's flowing.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of cultural competence comes in.
Okay,
It's not about becoming an expert in every single culture out there.
right.
It's more about developing that skill to interact effectively, understanding that values, beliefs, behaviors might be totally different from our own.
It's about being aware of our own biases, our own assumptions,
Yeah. Yeah, and being open to learning from others
approaching each interaction with respect.
with humility.
Yeah.
And one really practical way to do this, research.
Okay.
Before you travel somewhere new, before you interact with people from a different culture, just take a little time to learn basic customs, etiquette. It goes a long way.
It really does. It shows you're making an effort.
Yeah, and it can save you from some embarrassing
Oh,
moments.
no, tell me about it.
Those unintentional faux pas.
I remember one time I was traveling, and in this particular country, you had to take off your shoes before entering someone's home.
Oh, yeah.
And I totally forgot.
I know.
So embarrassing. But the host, they were so kind, they explained the custom.
You live and you learn, right?
You do.
Hmm.
Those experiences, they can be great learning opportunities.
They really are. And it reminds us that even when we have good intentions, we're going to make mistakes.
We're human.
Yeah. It's about being open to that correction, learning from those moments.
Absolutely. Approaching it all with a little bit of humor, too. Even with research, you're bound to encounter customs that are unfamiliar, right? Maybe even confusing. How do you handle those situations?
I think the best thing you can do is just ask questions.
Politely, of course.
Politely. If you're unsure, just ask. It's better than assuming. People are usually happy to share.
If you're genuinely interested.
Exactly. Now, of course, there are some questions to avoid. We want to be respectful, not intrusive.
Right, of course. Like, what kind of questions?
Well, anything too personal, especially when you're just meeting someone, you don't want to pry into personal beliefs or practices.
So, like, instead of asking about someone's personal religious beliefs, you could ask about the significance of a certain dance during a festival,
Exactly. You're showing interest in the custom, not getting too personal.
being sensitive to the context.
Respecting those boundaries. And sometimes it's not even about asking questions.
Okay, I see what you mean.
It's more about being observant,
Yeah.
adapting your behavior.
Like reading the room, sort of. If you're in a culture where speaking loudly in public is considered rude, be mindful of your volume.
Exactly. You're showing respect. It doesn't mean you have to completely change who you are.
Just make those little
A
adjustments.
sign of respect,
It's like being a good guest in someone's home.
Oh, I like that.
You follow their house rules
Right.
out of courtesy.
Makes sense. And, cultivating cultural sensitivity, it's not just about avoiding offense.
Right.
It's about embracing that richness, that diversity of human experience, recognizing that there are so many ways of seeing the world.
It's like adding new spices to your favorite dish.
Oh, good one.
You're not trying to replace the original flavors, you're enhancing them.
Exactly. You're expanding your horizons, challenging your assumptions, building bridges across cultures.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's a lifelong journey, one that can enrich our lives in so many ways.
So, as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. How can embracing these diverse customs and traditions contribute to a more interconnected world, a more harmonious world? What do you think?
That is a powerful question.
It really is.
I think, the more we learn about these different ways of life, the more we appreciate them,
Yeah.
the more we realize that we have so much in common.
More than we think sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Way more. I think one of the biggest things that gets in the way of a harmonious world is fear,
Fear
Fear of the unknown. When we see differences as threats.
instead of opportunities.
Exactly. It's like, have you ever tried a new food?
Sure, lots of times.
And it seems a little weird at first.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But then you took a bite and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
I love that.
That's what exploring customs and traditions can do. It pushes us.
Out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Makes us challenge those old ideas we have. It opens our minds to new ways of thinking, new ways of being.
It's like when you travel to a new country.
Oh, yeah.
You might feel a little culture shock at first,
Sure.
but then, you immerse yourself.
The local customs, the food.
You talk to people, you start to see things differently. You see the beauty in those differences.
It's those moments, right? Those genuine connections. When you see our shared humanity across cultures, that's when we start to build understanding.
Empathy.
Yes, empathy. It's realizing that no matter where we come from or what language we speak,
What customs we follow.
we share those same basic human needs. That need to connect, to belong, to find meaning and purpose.
That's so true.
And it's those needs, right? That's
Yeah.
what customs and traditions try to address. They give us this framework for life, from birth to death.
Guidance.
Meaning, that sense of continuity.
It's like a thread. It connects us to our past, our present, and our future. Gives us a sense of belonging.
Being part of something bigger.
It's powerful.
And it's through understanding those threads, respecting those threads, those different expressions, that's how we can weave a better world.
A more interconnected world.
A more harmonious world. It's a world worth working towards, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the key is approaching it all with curiosity, with humility,
And that desire to learn.
to learn from each other.
Yes. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into customs and traditions, I hope you leave here not just appreciating the diversity out there,
But also with a sense of hope
a sense of possibility.
that we can create a world where everyone feels seen and heard and respected.
Imagine that.
Maybe you'll even be inspired to explore some new custom or tradition yourself.
Expand your own horizons.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? There's always more to discover, more to learn.
More ways to connect with that richness of human experience. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep celebrating all those amazing customs and traditions that make our world so vibrant and fascinating.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're tackling cultures around the world.
Oh, wow.
We'll be using this fascinating guide called Bridging Cultures, a vocabulary and guide to global customs. It's packed with insights into traditions and celebrations and all sorts of things like communication styles.
Yeah, those can be tricky.
You know, have you ever been in a situation where you just felt completely lost in a sea of cultural differences?
Absolutely. It can feel like you're trying to speak a whole new language, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And speaking of languages, this guide starts by breaking down some key terms like cultural identity,
Yeah.
which is like the shared DNA of a group, the things that make them unique.
Right.
Then you have heritage, that inheritance from the past that shapes who we are today. And of course, there's cultural exchange, the way cultures influence each other.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how understanding these ideas can actually help you in real-life situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Like imagine you're in a business meeting with people from Japan. Knowing that Japanese culture often values indirect communication can make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I had a funny experience in Japan once where I thought a meeting was going great.
Oh, really?
Everyone was smiling and nodding.
Oh, no.
But later I found out they were politely disagreeing with everything I said.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
that's why understanding these subtle differences is so important.
It really is. Okay, so let's move on to something a little more fun, celebrations.
Always a good time.
This guide takes us on a global tour of festivities from Lunar New Year to Eid al-Fitr to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, celebrations are more than just parties, though. They give us a glimpse into what a culture really values.
That's so true. Like, think about Lunar New Year with those red envelopes full of money.
Right.
Then you have Eid al-Fitr, where sharing meals is a big part of the celebration.
Yeah.
And of course, here in the U.S., we have Thanksgiving, a time for family and, well, maybe a little too much turkey.
It's true. The symbolism behind these celebrations is really interesting, too.
Yeah.
Like during Lunar New Year, red represents luck and prosperity. And giving red envelopes symbolizes passing on blessings.
I see.
And those communal meals during Eid al-Fitr, they strengthen bonds within the community and emphasize things like sharing and generosity.
It's like each celebration tells a story about the culture.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've explored cultural practices and celebrations, but our adventure doesn't end there.
What's next?
Next, we're diving into the world of communication across cultures,
Oh, boy.
which can be tricky because what's considered polite in one culture might be totally rude in another.
Oh, for sure.
And this guide reminds us that communication isn't just about the words we use.
Right.
It's also about the context, the tone, even our gestures. Like how a thumbs up can be positive in lots of places, but in some parts of the Middle East, it's actually offensive.
That's a good example. Communication styles can be so different.
I know, it's fascinating.
In Germany and the USA, direct communication is really valued.
Uh-huh.
People say what they mean, clearly and explicitly.
Got it.
But then in Japan and India, indirect communication is often preferred.
Oh, interesting.
Meaning is conveyed more subtly through implications and nonverbal cues.
Wow. So how do we make sure we're communicating effectively and respectfully across cultures?
Well, one of the most important things is to be aware and observant.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those subtle cues and try to adjust your communication style accordingly.
So it's kind of like learning a new dance, but with words and gestures instead of steps.
I like that.
All right. Now, I can't let you go without talking about food.
Of course.
Because what better way to experience a culture than through its cuisine, right?
Food is definitely a window into a culture's soul.
This guide talks about cuisine, which is basically a region's signature cooking style.
Right.
Then you have staple foods, those essential ingredients that form the foundation of a culture's diet.
Like rice in Asia or pasta in Italy.
Exactly. And then there's hospitality, that warm feeling you get when someone shares their food and traditions with you.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. And dining customs can be so fascinating.
Tell me about it.
Like in Italy, meals are these long leisurely affairs
Oh, yeah.
where the focus is on savoring the food and enjoying the company.
It's an experience.
And finishing everything on your plate is actually a sign of respect for the chef.
Makes sense.
Then in China, sharing dishes is common, which reflects their more collectivist approach to dining.
That's interesting.
And tipping is not customary there. It's actually seen as an insult to the restaurant service.
Wow, you learn something new every day.
So even something as simple as a meal can be a cultural adventure.
Absolutely.
But what about those deeper aspects of a culture, the beliefs and values that shape how people see the world?
We're talking religion and spirituality now.
Exactly.
And that's a crucial part of understanding any culture.
The guide introduces terms like sacred, which refers to anything connected to religion or spirituality,
Okay.
like the Ganges River in Hinduism,
Yeah.
which is a sacred place for ritual bathing and purification. Then you have ritual, like attending Sunday service in Christianity. And lastly, there's pilgrimage, those journeys people take for religious reasons.
It's fascinating how these practices give us a glimpse into the different ways humans connect with the divine.
It really is.
Like in Buddhism, meditation and mindfulness are key practices that help people cultivate inner peace and insight.
So while the specific practices might differ, the search for connection and purpose seems to be a common thread across many cultures.
Definitely.
Okay, get ready to be dazzled because now we're stepping into the world of arts, music, and dance.
All right, let's do it.
It's time to unleash our inner artists and groove to the rhythm of global expression.
I love it. Arts, music, and dance are like cultural fingerprints.
That's a great way to put it.
They tell the story of a community's history, values, and creativity.
The guide dives into some cool terms like folklore, those traditional stories passed down through generations.
Right.
Then there's artisan, a skilled craftsperson who keeps those traditions alive. And lastly, there's choreography, the art of designing dance movements to tell a story without words.
So powerful.
Now imagine a whirlwind tour of global art forms.
Okay, I'm ready.
We have flamenco from Spain, a passionate dance form rooted in Andalusian culture.
Full of emotion.
Then there's kabuki from Japan, a classical theater that blends drama, music, and dance.
Amazing.
And from Brazil, we have samba, a vibrant and energetic dance style that's synonymous with carnival.
It's like you can feel the energy and passion just thinking about it.
Okay, now get ready, because we're about to explore the customs surrounding special life events from birth to death.
This should be interesting.
Different cultures mark these milestones in such unique and meaningful ways.
They really do.
The guide talks about ceremony, those
Yeah.
formal events that mark big occasions.
Okay.
Then there's blessing, which often accompanies these ceremonies.
Right.
And we can't forget about dowry, a tradition that's sometimes controversial in certain cultures.
It's amazing how diverse these customs can be.
It really is.
Like Indian weddings, for example.
Oh, yeah.
They're elaborate affairs lasting multiple days, filled with vibrant colors, music, dance, and rituals that symbolize the joining of two families.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
It is. Then in Ghana, they have the outdooring ceremony, where they introduce a newborn to the community.
Oh, that's sweet.
And in Tibet, they practice sky burials, returning the body to nature, which reflects their belief in the cyclical nature of life.
It's fascinating how different cultures approach these universal experiences.
It is. But remember, understanding cultures isn't just about knowing facts.
Right.
It's about putting that knowledge into action and interacting with others respectfully.
So how can we become more culturally sensitive in our interactions?
Bridging Cultures has some great advice.
I'm all ears.
It all starts with a few key things: tolerance, adaptability, and awareness.
Can you break those down for us?
Of course. Tolerance is the ability to accept differences without judgment.
Okay,
Adaptability is a skill of adjusting to new customs.
got it.
And awareness is being mindful of cultural norms.
So it's like building blocks for cultural intelligence.
Exactly.
So what are some practical steps we can take to become more culturally sensitive?
Well, before traveling to a new place, research some basic cultural norms like greetings, dining etiquette, dress codes.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I once traveled to a country where pointing with your index finger was considered super rude.
Oh, no.
I had to learn to gesture with my whole hand.
It's amazing how those little things can make such a big difference.
We really can.
It's also a good idea to use neutral language and ask open-ended questions about their customs.
So basically being curious and showing that you're interested.
Exactly. Showing genuine interest and appreciation can really help build connections.
So we've talked about learning from a guidebook, but how can we go beyond that? How can we really immerse ourselves and experience different cultures firsthand?
Well, that's where the idea of immersion comes in.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's about deeply involving yourself in a culture.
So like jumping in with both feet.
Exactly. You're not just observing anymore, you're participating.
That makes sense. But what if you can't just hop on a plane and travel to another country? How can we immerse ourselves closer to home?
That's a great question. Bridging Cultures suggests checking out local cultural events and workshops.
Oh, like what?
Well, many cities have festivals or events that celebrate traditions from around the world.
Right.
You could have Chinese New Year parades, Irish dance performances, gospel concerts, all kinds of things.
It's like a cultural sampler platter right in your own backyard.
Exactly. And for those who love food,
That's me.
trying different cuisines and learning how to cook them is a fantastic way to immerse yourself.
I'm always up for trying new foods.
You could find authentic restaurants, take cooking classes, or even connect with people from different cultures who can share their family recipes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great idea. There's something so special about sharing a meal and learning about the traditions behind it.
It's a beautiful thing.
Now, for the bookworms and film buffs out there, any suggestions for cultural immersion through art?
Definitely. Bridging Cultures recommends exploring films and literature from diverse cultural perspectives.
Oh, like that.
Imagine watching a Bollywood epic or a Japanese anime film or reading a novel set in the heart of Africa.
It's like taking a mental vacation to another part of the world.
Exactly.
Mm.
And by engaging with these art forms, we're not just being entertained, we're expanding our understanding of different perspectives and worldviews.
It's about recognizing that there are many ways of seeing and experiencing the world.
Well said.
Now, what about more structured programs that can help bridge cultures?
Have you ever considered exchange programs?
Yeah,
They offer an amazing opportunity to really immerse yourself.
I can imagine.
Imagine spending a semester abroad, studying at a foreign university, living with a host family, making new friends.
That sounds like such an incredible experience.
It really is. And exchange programs aren't just for students.
Oh, really?
Not at all. There are programs for professionals, artists, researchers, families, all sorts of people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They really promote cross-cultural dialogue and understanding on a global scale. It's about breaking down barriers and realizing that we're all connected.
That's amazing. Now, even with the best intentions, navigating cultural differences can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure we've all had those moments where we've said or done something that was unintentional offensive.
It happens to the best of us.
What advice does Bridging Cultures have for handling those potentially awkward situations?
Well, the guide emphasizes the importance of cultural literacy.
Okay, I've heard that term, but what does it actually mean?
It's about understanding and participating effectively in a different culture.
So it's more than just knowing facts.
Right. It's about developing awareness, sensitivity,
Yeah.
and the ability to adapt to different communication styles and social norms.
So it's kind of like learning a new language, but instead of words, we're learning the unspoken rules of social interaction.
You got it. It's about being observant, asking questions respectfully, and being willing to learn from our mistakes.
So embrace those awkward moments and don't let them discourage you from engaging with different cultures.
Exactly. Those moments are often the best learning experiences.
What other tips does Bridging Cultures offer for navigating those cross-cultural encounters?
Active listening, asking clarifying questions, and avoiding assumptions are crucial.
Those are good ones.
Try to see the world from another person's perspective and appreciate the richness and complexity of their cultural heritage.
It's about approaching each interaction with curiosity, empathy, and a desire to learn.
You nailed it.
Okay, so we've explored the what and the how of bridging cultures, but what about the why? Why is embracing cultural diversity and understanding so important?
That's a great question, and Breaking Cultures offers some insightful answers.
I'm listening.
First, embracing cultural diversity enriches our lives on a personal level.
Yeah.
It exposes us to new ideas, perspectives, experiences. It broadens our horizons and challenges our assumptions.
It's like adding a whole new dimension to our lives.
Exactly. But the benefits go far beyond just personal enrichment.
Oh, wait.
Cultural diversity strengthens communities and societies. It fosters innovation, creativity, problem solving.
That makes sense.
When we embrace diversity, we tap into this collective well of wisdom and experience.
It's like having a huge brainstorming session where everyone brings something unique to the table.
I like that analogy. And of course, there are global implications as well.
Right, because we're all interconnected.
Exactly. In our increasingly interconnected world, understanding and appreciating different cultures is essential for promoting peace, cooperation, and global citizenship.
It's about breaking down those cultural barriers and building bridges of understanding, empathy, and respect.
Well said. It's about celebrating our differences and working together to create a more just equitable and harmonious world.
So it's not just about learning about other cultures, it's about creating a better world for everyone.
Absolutely. Bridging Cultures reminds us that this is an ongoing journey, a lifelong commitment to learning, growing, and connecting with others across cultural divides.
It's about constantly expanding our cultural vocabulary, refining our intercultural skills, and approaching each interaction with an open heart and a curious mind.
Beautifully put.
And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive. Join us for part 3, where we'll wrap up our cultural adventure with some final insights and a challenge for you to continue your own journey of discovery. Welcome back, everyone. We're wrapping up our exploration into the amazing world of cultures, and I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Yeah, me too. It's been a fascinating journey so far.
It really has. We've covered so much, from those basic cultural concepts to celebrating traditions from around the globe.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Exactly. This guide, Bridging Cultures, is really just a starting point.
It's like a springboard for deeper exploration.
I like that analogy. The real learning begins when we step outside of our comfort zones and actively engage with different cultures.
It's not just about reading about it, it's about experiencing it.
So how do we do that? How do we take all these insights and turn them into action?
Well, Bridging Cultures has some great parting info. With curiosity and openness.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Approaching every interaction with a genuine desire to learn and appreciate different perspectives.
So it's about letting go of those preconceived notions and really embracing the unknown.
Exactly. And another key point is to practice empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Try to imagine yourself in someone else's shoes and see the world through their eyes.
It's about remembering that we all share this human experience, even if our backgrounds are different.
Well said.
Bridging Cultures also talks about respectful communication.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial.
Because what might be totally fine in one culture could be offensive in another.
Right?
Right.
We need to be mindful of our words, our tone, even our nonverbal cues.
It's about being sensitive to those nuances and adapting our communication style accordingly.
And sometimes it's about simply asking for clarification.
Yeah. It's okay to say, I don't understand, or can you explain that to me?
Absolutely. It shows that you're genuinely interested in learning.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to circle back to that idea of creating opportunities for cultural exchange in our own communities.
Yeah, that's an important one.
It's easy to talk about bridging cultures on a global scale, but what about right here at home?
It starts by recognizing the diversity that already exists in our own backyards.
Yeah, we don't have to travel far to experience different cultures.
And then it's about creating spaces and opportunities for people from different backgrounds to connect and share their experiences.
So what are some practical ways we can do that?
Well, think about organizing potluck dinners, where everyone brings a dish that represents their culture,
Oh, that's a fun idea.
or hosting storytelling nights where people share their family traditions and folktales.
Love that.
We could even create community art projects that celebrate the diverse artistic expressions in our neighborhoods.
It doesn't have to be complicated, right?
Not at all. Even just striking up a conversation with someone from a different background can be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, just asking someone about their culture and sharing a bit about your own.
Exactly. Every interaction, no matter how small, can help build those bridges of understanding.
And it's a journey, not a destination.
That's so true.
There will be bumps along the way, misunderstandings, awkward moments, but those are all opportunities to learn and grow.
We need to be patient with ourselves and with others.
Because building understanding takes time and effort and genuine care.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we close out this deep dive into the world of cultures, I want to leave you with this thought. The world is a magnificent tapestry woven with countless cultures, traditions, and stories. Let's be curious enough to explore its intricate patterns, compassionate enough to appreciate its vibrant colors, and courageous enough to add our own threads to its ever-evolving design. The journey of cultural discovery is just beginning, and it's an adventure we can all share. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, and keep exploring. All right, welcome to another deep dive. We're going global today.
Global.
Yeah, getting into all sorts of fascinating cultures and customs from, all corners of the world.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of like your essential guide to understanding and respecting those differences, all those things that make our world so incredibly diverse.
Mhm.
Hopefully you'll pick up a few fun facts along the way, too.
Absolutely.
We're going to be pulling from this guide to global customs and traditions that we have here.
Sounds good.
So, let's dive right in. I think it's easy to think about, cultural awareness as just being polite, right?
Right.
But the guide here really highlights how it's really about unlocking a much deeper understanding of the world and the people in it.
It really is. It goes so much deeper than just being polite.
Yeah.
For example, sticking chopsticks upright in a bowl in China.
Oh, yeah.
It seems harmless enough at first glance,
Right.
but it actually resembles incense sticks used in funeral rituals,
Oh, wow.
which makes it a huge faux pas in Chinese culture.
So something that we might see as kind of insignificant or a minor detail
Right.
could actually hold a really deep cultural significance elsewhere, right?
Exactly.
And that kind of awareness can be especially important when we're traveling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine going to Brazil's carnival and not knowing the history and
Yeah.
symbolism behind those vibrant costumes and the music and everything.
Right.
Cultural awareness can turn, a simple sightseeing trip into a truly immersive experience.
Absolutely. Okay, well, speaking of captivating celebrations, let's talk about festivals around the world.
Oh, yes, please.
I'm looking through the guide, and there's some amazing ones in here.
Yeah.
We've got Brazil's Carnival, of course, with its just explosion of color and music. India's Diwali, the Festival of Lights, where people illuminate their homes to symbolize the triumph of good over evil.
Hmm.
And then, of course, we've got Germany's Oktoberfest with its beer and music and all that great traditional attire.
Each festival offers a truly unique glimpse into a culture's soul, I think.
Yeah.
Diwali, for example, is celebrated by Hindus, Sikhs, and Jains,
Oh, wow.
each with their own kind of unique interpretations and customs,
Yeah.
kind of woven into the fabric of the festival itself.
Mm.
It's a beautiful testament to how, even within a single country, you see this flourishing of cultural diversity.
Right.
But, it's not just about the spectacle.
Yeah.
It's also about the meaning.
Right.
Diwali, for example, celebrates Rama's return from exile after defeating the demon king Ravana.
Oh, okay.
Symbolizes light overcoming darkness, knowledge over ignorance.
Wow.
Really powerful metaphors that resonate across cultures, I think.
Absolutely. It's not just about having fun. It's really steeped in so much meaning and history. Okay, well, speaking of cultural expression, let's move on to something that's both practical and deeply symbolic. Traditional clothing.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah, I was looking through this, and it's really amazing how much clothing can say about, a culture and the people who wear it.
It's a powerful statement of identity,
Right, yeah.
reflecting everything from social status to religious beliefs to all sorts of things.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got a few here from the guide
Yeah.
that I thought were just stunning. We've got the elegant silk kimonos of Japan, often worn for special occasions.
Beautiful.
We've got the vibrant dashiki of West Africa, a powerful symbol of African heritage.
Yeah.
And then we've got the dirndl, a traditional dress seen in the alpine regions of Germany and Austria.
I love dirndls.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much cultural information can be conveyed just through clothing.
Right?
Like the dirndl, for example.
Mhm.
It often features a bodice, a blouse, a skirt, and an apron. But the way it's tied can indicate whether the wearer is single, married, or widowed.
Really?
It's like a subtle but powerful way of communicating within that culture.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah,
Makes you realize how much we might miss if we don't take the time to understand, the cultural significance behind these traditions.
absolutely.
Okay, well let's move on to a topic that can be a little bit tricky, I think, for the uninitiated dining etiquette.
Oh, yes.
It's interesting. The guide really emphasizes how dining customs are really deeply ingrained in cultural values
Right.
and often reflect societal norms around respect, hierarchy, and community.
Hmm.
So we already talked about, the chopsticks faux pas in China.
Right.
But there's so many other nuances to consider.
There are.
Like, for instance, in many traditional Indian settings, eating with the right hand is customary because the left hand is considered unclean.
Oh, right, yes. And then you've got, in France, keeping your hands on the table but your elbows off.
Yes.
It's interesting how these customs might seem random at first,
Mhm.
but they often have practical or historical roots.
They do.
Like in India, the use of the right hand for eating is linked to hygiene practices.
Yes.
In a time, of course, before modern sanitation.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating how these rules that seem arbitrary often have a much deeper meaning and logic behind them.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk about greetings and social norms, where I think things can get particularly interesting.
Yes, they can.
Even a simple hello can be surprisingly complex.
Mm-hmm.
So like in Western cultures, the handshake is really common.
Right.
But in Japan, a bow is the customary greeting.
Yes.
And the depth of that bow often reflects the level of respect.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got, the kiss on the cheek that's common in parts of Europe and Latin America.
Yeah. But even that, the number of kisses and which cheek you start with can vary.
Yes, it can.
It can lead to some potentially awkward moments, for sure.
Definitely.
And of course, you can't forget the way in Thailand
Oh, yes.
with that graceful gesture where you press your palms together
Beautiful.
in a prayer-like motion.
It is.
So it's also important to understand those cultural boundaries, I think.
Absolutely.
For example, in some Middle Eastern cultures, men and women often greet each other separately.
Right.
And it's not about being unfriendly. It's about adhering to those deeply ingrained social norms.
Exactly.
So what might be considered polite in one culture could be completely inappropriate in another.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is where the concept of high context versus low context cultures comes into play.
Yeah, right.
High context cultures like Japan rely heavily on nonverbal cues and shared understanding,
Mm-hmm.
whereas low context cultures like the U.S. are much more direct and explicit in their communication.
So you can imagine the potential for miscommunication there if you're not really aware of these differences, right?
Absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm really curious to dive deeper into that, but before we do, let's shift gears a little bit and explore ceremonial practices around the world.
Okay.
These ceremonies really offer a fascinating window into how cultures mark those significant life transitions,
Yeah.
and connect with something larger than themselves, right?
Right.
I've got a few here from the guide that I thought were really captivating. The Jewish bar or bat mitzvah, a coming-of-age ceremony marking that transition into adulthood.
Yes.
The Japanese tea ceremony, a ritual that's just steeped in symbolism, representing harmony, respect, and tranquility.
It's beautiful.
And then Mexico's Day of the Dead, a vibrant celebration of life and death,
Yes.
where families honor their deceased loved ones with offerings and sugar skulls.
It's really amazing how these ceremonies can be so diverse.
Right.
Yet they all speak to that universal human need
Mm-hmm.
to find meaning and connection in the face of life's milestones and mysteries.
It's incredible how cultures all around the world can find such unique and beautiful ways to express those shared human experiences.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to our cultural adventure. Last time we were exploring some amazing traditions from around the world. Now we're diving a little deeper into communication styles.
Yeah, we touched on high context versus low context cultures,
Right.
and I'm ready to unpack that a little bit more.
Okay.
It's amazing how much communication goes beyond just, the actual words we say.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like there's this whole hidden language that we need to learn.
Yeah.
So in high context cultures, communication is very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
It relies heavily on shared understanding, nonverbal cues, and the overall context of the situation.
So it's not just what you say, but how you say it, right?
How-
And even what you don't say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Japan is a great example of this. If someone says maybe to a request,
Yeah.
it might actually mean no,
Oh, wow.
but they're expressing it indirectly to maintain that sense of harmony.
That could lead to some serious confusion if you're coming from a more direct culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Low context cultures, on the other hand,
Mhm.
like the U.S. or Germany,
Yeah.
they're all about clear and explicit communication.
So there's less room for interpretation there.
Right. Imagine a business negotiation, for example,
Oh, yeah.
between someone from a high context culture and someone from a low context culture.
Yeah.
That indirectness of the high context approach
Right.
might be perceived as evasive or untrustworthy
Yeah.
by the low context
Yeah.
person,
Right.
while the directness of the low context person might be seen as rude or aggressive
Right.
by the high context person.
It's like they're speaking different languages even though they're using the same words, right?
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how important it is to be aware of these differences.
Oh, it's huge, yeah.
Yeah.
It can make or break a deal, a
Yeah.
friendship, or even just a simple conversation.
Right.
The guide also delves into some specific vocabulary related to communication.
Okay.
We've got dialects,
Yeah.
which are regional variations of a language.
Mhm.
You might even encounter dialects within the same country
Oh, yeah.
that make it difficult to understand each other.
That's happened to me before. I was traveling through a rural part of Italy,
Oh, really?
and I could barely understand a word the locals were saying, even though I thought I knew Italian pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough.
Just goes to show how diverse language can be, even within a single country.
Absolutely.
And then there's nonverbal communication,
Right.
gestures, facial expressions, body language.
Mm.
A simple thumbs up, which is generally a positive sign in Western cultures,
Yeah.
might be considered offensive in some Middle Eastern countries.
Wow, that's that's a good reminder to be careful about using gestures we might take for granted, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there are politeness forms.
Right.
These are linguistic expressions used to show respect or deference,
Mm-hmm.
and these can vary widely across cultures,
Right.
and they can be tricky to navigate.
Yeah, I remember struggling with this in Japan.
Oh, really?
They have all these different levels of formality depending on who you're talking to
Right. Yeah.
and the situation. I felt like I was constantly saying the wrong thing.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes time and practice to master those nuances, but even a basic understanding of politeness forms can go a long way
Absolutely.
in showing respect.
Yeah. So we've covered high context versus low context cultures,
Right.
dialects,
Hmm.
nonverbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
politeness forms. It's a lot. It's clear that effective communication really goes way beyond just knowing the words.
Really does, yeah.
So what are some tips the guide offers for actually navigating these differences in real life situations?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to approach every interaction with an open mind.
Yeah.
Be receptive to new ideas, even if they challenge your assumptions.
Right. So it's about embracing that diversity of human experience
Yes.
rather than trying to impose our own cultural framework on others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The guide also stresses the importance of cultural relativism.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea of understanding cultures on their own terms, without judgment.
So instead of judging a custom that seems strange to us,
Right.
we should try to understand its significance within that culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about putting aside our biases and trying to see the world through the eyes of others.
Easier said than done, but definitely worth striving for.
It is, yeah.
Are there any other practical tips?
Well, the guide suggests observing first and asking questions later.
Okay.
So when you enter a new cultural setting,
Mm-hmm.
take some time to observe how people behave and interact.
So it's like becoming a cultural detective.
Yes.
Gathering clues to decipher the unspoken rules.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And once you've observed and gathered some information, it's perfectly fine to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Most people appreciate genuine curiosity.
Right. So it's about being humble
Yes,
and willing to learn.
absolutely.
Mm.
And finally, remember to respect boundaries.
Yeah.
Every culture has its own set of norms and taboos, so do your research.
Mm.
Avoid topics or behaviors that might be considered offensive or inappropriate.
It's like doing your homework before a trip, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
You wouldn't travel to a new country without learning a few basic phrases
Right.
or researching the local customs.
Exactly.
And ultimately, all of this comes down to empathy. I think that's the key to bridging cultural divides.
It allows us to connect with others on a human level, regardless of their background.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and celebrate the diversity that makes our world so vibrant.
Well, this has been a truly eye-opening exploration of communication styles and cultural sensitivity.
I agree.
In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to reflect on what we've learned and consider how to apply this newfound knowledge in our own lives, so stay tuned.
Hmm.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've journeyed from those vibrant streets of Rio during Carnival to the quiet of a Japanese tea ceremony.
It's been quite a trip.
It has, right?
Yeah.
Decoded handshakes and bows, explored the subtleties of high and low context cultures, learned how even chopsticks can hold deep meaning.
So much to learn.
So much, right? But the real journey begins now, taking all these insights and weaving them into our daily lives.
I think that's the exciting part.
It is, right?
No.
So let's take a moment to come up from this deep dive and reflect on what we've learned. What stands out to you? What are some key takeaways?
You know, for me, it's the reminder that even those seemingly small gestures, they really do carry significant weight. The way we greet someone, the way we eat, even something as simple as a thumbs up can have completely different meanings
Oh, yeah.
across cultures.
Yeah.
Really reinforces the importance of approaching every interaction with a sense of curiosity and humility, I think.
It's like that saying, assume good intentions,
Right.
but recognize cultural differences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's not just about avoiding those faux pas, right?
Right.
It's about genuinely connecting with people from different backgrounds.
It is.
And imagine the possibilities when we embrace those differences and learn from each other's perspectives.
Absolutely, yeah.
The guide also emphasized cultural relativism, that idea of understanding cultures on their own terms without judgment.
Yeah.
It's so easy to slip into thinking that our way is the right way.
Right.
But this deep dive has really, really challenged me to step outside of that mindset.
I think it's an ongoing process, right?
It is.
It requires us to be open to new perspectives and ways of thinking because there isn't one right way to do things, right?
Right.
There are simply different ways, each shaped by unique historical, social, and environmental influences.
Yeah. Thinking back on everything we've discussed, what surprised you the most?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Was there a cultural practice that maybe challenged your assumptions or sparked a new curiosity?
Yeah.
Honestly, I was fascinated by the concept of high context versus low context cultures.
Yeah.
It really highlighted how easily misunderstandings can occur when we're not aware of those different communication styles.
Right. It's like we're all speaking different languages, even when we're using the same word.
Exactly.
Right. And being aware of those nuances can help us communicate more effectively and avoid unnecessary conflicts.
Absolutely. And these awareness isn't just for travel or personal interactions.
Right.
It's crucial in the workplace, in international relations, in building a more inclusive and interconnected world.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I encourage you to continue exploring that incredible tapestry of cultures around the world. Read books, watch documentaries, strike up conversations with people from different backgrounds. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
That's true.
And that's really where the adventure lies.
It is. It's a journey of discovery, not just of the world around us, but also of ourselves and our place in this global community.
Absolutely. Cultural awareness isn't a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, unlearning, and relearning.
It is.
So keep your minds open, your curiosity piqued, and your sense of adventure alive.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.